Այս պահին ես Միջազգային հարաբերությունների լեհական ինստիտուտում եմ։ Այս ինստիտուտը վերլուծական կենտրոն է, որը սերտ համագործակցում է Լեհաստանի կառավարության հետ, ստանում հետազոտական պատվերներ։ Ես եկել եմ ինստիտուտ զրուցելու վերլուծաբանների հետ։ Նրանցից մեկը ինձ պատմեց, թե ինչպես է գործում ինստիտուտը, ինչպես է համագործակցում կառավարության հետ, իսկ մյուսը խոսեց Հայաստանում սպասվող բարեփոխումների մասին, բարձրագույն կրթության եւ գիտության ոլորտում։ Մեր զրույցների մանրամասները կարող եք լսել հարցազրույցներում։ Mr. Kulesa, thank you for having us here in the Polish Institute of International Affairs. And your institute collaborates with the Polish government, and it has both its independent research and also government-requested research. With which government bodies do you cooperate, and which mechanism the government assigns research activities to the institute, and how do you evaluate the collaboration with the government and also the importance of the Polish Institute of International Affairs in policy making of Poland?
First, thanks for the visit and welcome to the Institute. And I hope that our experience would be interesting and valuable also for Armenia. But the Institute is a special entity because it was established by an act of parliament. So it has a formal role which is attached to the Polish law. That gives us the continuity, that gives us a certain framework in which we operate. So, for example, our tasks are not set by our own researchers, but they are put in this law on the Polish Institute of International Affairs. And indeed, research is one of them, providing analysis, providing experts' opinions and forecasts to the various bodies of the public administration. It is there in the law. And we have the closest connection with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are not part of that ministry, but that's the natural connection since we deal with international relations. Beyond the MFA, the chancelleries of the president and of the prime minister, and in the Polish system, the chancellor of the prime minister also deals with a number of European Union related issues. Then frequent collaboration, frequent contacts with both chambers of the parliament, with particular commissions, also with some parts of the military, for example, the general staff, and also various other ministries. We work on non-classified material. We only work on open sources. Some of our researchers, they can have access to classified information, but our starting point is that we work on open sources. We provide sometimes the analysis at our own initiative if we think that there is something that the government or various partners should know, but we often act at their requests. And the requests are very diverse. Sometimes these are very simple questions, sometimes connected to the visits and meetings which are happening. Sometimes there are kind of more comprehensive requests to analyze a particular problem or relation with a country or a region. We also do a lot of consultations with various in some parts of these institutions that I mentioned, where we try to feed our analysis into the decision-making process.
You have state funding, and the director and the advisory council are assigned by the Prime Minister of the Poland. But do you have other sources for your research activities, maybe grant projects, national or international?
So in case of our institute, 95% of the funding comes from the state budget. So each year the parliament decides what is the amount of money which is directed to the institute. which gives it this continuity, but also this idea that this is not about a particular political party, that this is a cross-party issue of supporting this kind of research. So 95% of the funding, it's about 20 million of Polish zloty, which is about 5 million of euros, 5.5 million of dollars for all of our work. This is not just research, but also training, publishing house, events, conferences. So it's a broad range of things. We also have 3 offices abroad in Belgium, in Brussels, in Berlin, and in Washington, D.C. 5% is these other sources of income. So that includes income from our participation in various fundraising grant projects. Also the income that we got from training that sometimes is paid for by the participant, the income from selling our books and publications. But 95% is from the state budget.
You also have educational mission and have trainings for personnel who is engaged in international relations, foreign policy. I guess this initiative is with cooperation with the government, and it is interesting whether you have training for personnel of specific ministries which are engaged in these activities, foreign policy, international relations.
So, of course, there is a separate diplomatic academy, which is not connected to PISM, but it's part of the MFA, and they have the dedicated training for the people who wants to be in the diplomatic service or in the consular service. But, of course, there is a number of people at different parts of the administration at the level of Warsaw, at the level of capital, but also at the level of our regions that deal with foreign relations. They are not diplomats, but actually they have frequent contacts with their foreign counterparts. They do cross-border cooperation, so they don't need this kind of dedicated training that the diplomatic academy provides, but they need to have a deep knowledge or deeper knowledge of international relations. So we have something which is our flagship training project, which is a foreign policy course or foreign policy study, which is for 9 months. People meet during weekends. They have 180 hours of various seminars, and they cover a lot of topics: global issues, regional issues, also international negotiations. So that is directed to those within the administration, but also from outside. Sometimes we have journalists, sometimes we have experts who are working on particular issue and they want to expand their scope. And that gives them this kind of broad but also deep knowledge of international relations.
And do you collaborate with universities? Maybe you have this kind of trainings for students with study and research activities match with your research interests.
So some of our researchers are also in the academia, so they divide their workload between working here and working at various universities in Poland. So the overlap is there. Of course, we welcome also the group of students which coming and want to learn more about what we are doing. We look at them as potential prospective researchers. So one of our mission is actually to publicize and disseminate information about international relations to the Polish society. So students are important part of it. But the cooperation is more on the case-by-case basis. We keep our work and the universities are doing their work. We are much more, let's say, issue-oriented. We don't do theoretical research. We do applied research on particular things that are happening. If there is something happening on Monday, on Tuesday we should have an analysis on that issue. And that's not always how the university works.
And my last question, in Armenia, the public opinion sometimes is shaped by politicians, sometimes by fake news. And I know that the Polish Institute of International Affairs has articles which are not only for politicians, for the government or academic community, but also for wide audience like me. And what is the importance of think tanks in influencing and shaping the public opinion?
You touch on a very important issue, and it's not just in Armenia, also in Poland, the public opinion and the discussion is shaped by many different sources. And I think in a sense it's natural in democratic societies that nobody tells you what to think. There is no one, and the experts cannot claim to know everything. But we consider it part of our mission to actually be there, be available to the media. We are present in the social media. We are doing podcasts. We are doing video materials, mostly in Poland. But if you go on our website, there's a lot available also in English. But with the Polish public opinion, we want to be engaged as much as possible. Some of our analyses are very short. There's basically questions and answers. So those who can watch on their smartphones, they can do it on their smartphones. They don't have to read 20 or 30 pages of this very heavy analysis. And of course, this is also our way to somehow contribute to the quality of this debate. Our research is very cautiously checked. We have the long procedure of checking and double checking. So we want to make sure that the data and the analysis we provide are on the top methodological level. Of course, sometimes we have to be there on the marketplace of ideas with people who claim to have this knowledge or just claim to have wonderful solutions to all sorts of foreign policy issues. But I think we can win in this argument, or we can prevail through our very strong expert credentials, and also through our experience of how we produce the knowledge and analysis. But that's also part of the not just internal but external functions of the institutes like PISM, that we, in a sense, we are telling the Polish, we are telling the Polish story to the outside world. And we are trying to explain our foreign policy, our security policy, always with respect to the views of others, but to have a voice which is a credible expert voice from Warsaw.
Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Wojtasiewicz, it's a pleasure to meet you here at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. The Armenian government initiated reforms in the higher education and science landscape, and the government wants to merge all the universities of Armenia into 6 big universities and integrate all the scientific organizations into them. And there are concerns in the academic community of Armenia that this decision isn't based on research, expert opinion, and the Polish Institute of International Affairs is an example that the decisions of government can be backed and can be based on knowledge that comes from the research. What is the importance in decision making, not only in international affairs but all fields, to have expert opinion, research on the basis of that decisions?
Armenia is a developing country which introduced constantly a lot of reforms. Now is dealing with the reform of the higher educations, and in Poland, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and communism, and during the transformation period, appeared a lot of private universities. First of all, I would like to underline that I'm not an expert on higher education system, but I can say from my personal experience and my observations what was going on in Poland, also in South Caucasus countries. From one point of view, in my opinion, maybe it's not the worst idea to try to control the number of the universities, especially in such not a huge big country like Armenia. And when I'm thinking about the reform in Armenia, to my mind is coming the example of Georgia. And in 2004, when Mikhail Saakashvili became the president of Georgia, he also introduced the educational reform, higher educational reform, and he also tried to diminish the number of the universities because most of them, or many of them, was on the quite low level regarding the quality of the education. Unfortunately, I don't know the details of the reform, and it's tried to judge it, but in my opinion, in every reform regarding the higher education, general education, the most important issue should be the quality of education. I mean, not only the infrastructure, of course, which is also quite important, you know, to have good conditions to be taught and to learn something, but also the quality of the education. And those kind of transformation, in my opinion, needs more time. It's time consuming because we can construct a building, campus quite easily, I mean, in 1 year, 2 years, but you know, the reform of the way of teaching, I mean, educating of teachers, changing also the mentality is more complicated and it needs more time. But as far as I know, I mean, that reform also consists of cooperation with the external foreign universities, and in my opinion, it's a good direction because if such a small country like Armenia wants to boost the higher education system, should cooperate with the external, with the foreign universities. And of course, politicians, when they would like to introduce some kind of the reforms, they should base on the expert opinions. But sometimes it's difficult, you know, to follow that path because, you know, experts and their opinions could be also different. You know, part of that expert community could support one kind of the idea, the other could support completely different opinion. But of course, I mean, the best options in every country when you would like to reform kind of sector, kind of field of the state's activities, it's good to talk with all sides which are interested in such kind of reform, because at the very end of that process there are people who should or who might implement such kind of the reform. So if the academia, for example, if the academia community will be completely against such kind of reforms, there will be not success. So I think the good idea is that the current Armenian government would like to change the situation in the higher education system, but also, I mean, the details are the more important. So we'll see how that situation will develop.
And you have in-depth knowledge on this, in South Caucasus region, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and you know how complicated relations Armenia has with its neighbors, with Russia, with the West. And imagine a situation when Armenia has a government-based and government-funded organization or agency like Polish Institute of International Affairs. How could this kind of organization help Armenian government in decision-making, especially in international relations?
Well, it's really good when the government has the institution like the Polish Institute of International Affairs with independent experts, and even that, I mean, such kind of institution is financed by the government. But when those experts are really independent, there are no political pressures on what we are writing, what we are analyzing, our recommendation, our conclusions. Is good because government, politicians, the different governments can use our expertise to reach, I mean, to solve some problems, to indicate the solutions. And I think in the developing countries like Armenia and South Caucasus countries, I think such kind of institutions could be also very helpful for structural changes and for implementing reforms. But as I mentioned, those experts should be fully independent, and they couldn't be afraid to present their opinions, which can go in completely different directions to the attitudes, to the opinions of the current government. It's really important.
Thank you very much for your time and for your insights. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.